SpaceX's Starship is huge, powerful, and pushes the limits of engineering, but Elon Musk has hinted at Starship 2.0. What is the Starship 2.0? This is a sneak preview into the Starship 2.0, the insane successor to the Starship. The Starship, currently being built and tested in Boca Chica, is a huge spacecraft. It is the tallest spaceship ever assembled, standing at 120 meters when both stages are stacked together. At 9 meters in diameter, the Starship is also one of the widest. In terms of capacity, the Starship is simply the most powerful rocket ever assembled. It will have a payload capacity of over 100 tons to low Earth orbit. Total space for cargo in the upper stage is 9 meters in diameter and 18 meters in height. The space can be configured for crew passenger uses. SpaceX intends the Starship mainly for long interplanetary trips, with Mars the main focus, but with plans for planets even further away in the solar system. This will support its company founder's dream of founding permanent, self-sustaining human settlements on Mars. When NASA, who has agreed to put $2.9 billion into its development, takes the Starship to the moon in its Project Artemis in 2024, it will be basically a test run for what Musk intends to use it for. NASA will use the Starship to put its astronauts on the moon as a human lander, after they arrive in orbit in the agency's Orion spacecraft. While the Starship is going to be insanely powerful, Musk is already thinking about the next version of the spacecraft. As the avid user of Twitter Musk is, it is very easy to follow his thoughts on his company's current and future products. He responds directly to questions from his massive follower base on virtually anything. Back in 2019, when the Starship was still in its infancy, SpaceX had just finished the second free-flight test of its prototype, then known as the Starhopper, and Musk was, as usual, commemorating the success with tweets of drone footage of the test. One of his excited fans wanted to know if a next version of the Starship was being planned and what size it would be. He asked if the diameter would be more than 12 meters. A bit of context here is necessary. The fan mentioned 12 meters because the initial design of the Starship was 12 meters in diameter, back when it was still known as the Interplanetary Transport System, or ITS. Musk's reply both confirmed the planned proportions and the existence of the idea. He tweeted back, "Probably 18 meters for next-gen system." That leaves room for interesting ideas about the Starship 2.0. Let's start with the diameter. Doubling the diameter of the Starship basically increases the surface area by a factor of 4 by simple mathematics. So Starship 2.0 will have a base surface area 4 times the size of the current Starship. Musk did not reveal the height of the upgraded Starship, but assuming that 2 is doubled, Starship 2.0 will stand at an insane 240 meters. That is as tall as the Woolworth Building in New York, or 3/4 of the height of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Gross volume will then be 9 times more than the current capacity. This will increase the propellant tank volume by a factor of 8. It also means Starship 2.0 will be at least 8 times heavier. The heavier weight means more work for the rocket engines, as they need to match with more than 8 times the thrust to be able to lift off the ground. With these assumptions, Starship 2.0 would be capable of 8 times the payload the current Starship can lift to orbit. This brings us to about 800 tons to low Earth orbit. Has anybody, apart from Musk, thought of rockets bigger and more powerful than the current Starship? Yes, Robert Truax did in 1962, years before Musk was born. He called the rocket the Sea Dragon. It was a 2-stage rocket to be launched at sea. It had a payload capacity of 550 tons and stood at 150 meters tall, 30 meters clear of the Starship, with a diameter of 23 meters, more than double the Starship. But, of course, it was never built as it was a concept. Even the original Starship was bigger in proportion and more powerful. The ITS had a diameter of 12 meters before it was slimmed down to 9 meters. It would have launched 300 tons to orbit and increased that to 450 tons on refueling for a typical trip to Mars. A bigger and more powerful Starship will only help Musk achieve his Mars goals faster. The ability to lift more cargo per trip will make delivering the supplies needed by the colonizers faster as less trips will be involved. Starship 2.0 will also increase the number of passengers per batch. Musk estimates the current Starship passenger capacity at 100, but Starship 2.0 could have close to 1,000. That would definitely decrease the length of waiting list for interested voyagers. With more power produced by Starship 2.0, the time taken for trips will be reduced, meaning Musk's passengers will touch down on Mars faster than currently anticipated. This will definitely make the trip less boring. It will also reduce their exposure to harmful cosmic radiation that abounds in space. Even if the cost consideration could limit the production of the Starship 2.0, SpaceX could decide to make a limited number and use them as fuel tankers for normal starships to refuel from. At this point, we do not expect any spacecraft from SpaceX not to be reusable, so Starship 2.0 should complete many trips in its lifetime. It should detach similarly to the current Starship, and the booster stage should return to the Earth. Starship 2.0 should also be capable of landing upright at both stages to enhance its reusability. What will the Starship 2.0 look like physically? If the current design works well, there is no real reason for SpaceX to radically change it. The goal would be to scale it up. This brings us to another interesting detail of the Starship 2.0. What will power the updated Starship? If SpaceX is relying on its Raptor engines, then a whole lot of them would be needed to power the Starship 2.0. The current design requires close to 40, and the total number still remains a moving target. Starship 2.0 may require more than 100, but that is assuming the Raptor engine does not improve in capacity, which is highly unlikely. SpaceX will continue to tweak it to extract maximum performance from it. Besides, nothing really says SpaceX cannot come up with an entirely new rocket engine design for Starship 2.0, just like it did for the current Starship. The Falcon Heavy used Merlin rocket engines, which SpaceX ditched in favor of the methane-powered Raptor engine. Other options for SpaceX to pursue is nuclear propulsion, which we explored in another video, or use of solar sails, another option we have covered on this channel. As for any time frame for seeing the Starship 2.0, we are left to guess, but it will surely come after SpaceX has certified the current Starship, and maybe even after it has started carrying out missions for NASA with it. NASA's plan indicates expanded Mars exploration in the 2030s involving astronauts. If SpaceX is able to pull Starship 2.0 off before then, it might be the spacecraft the agency will use to send its astronauts to the Red Planet. Will NASA put money into the Starship 2.0? It is not unlikely, especially if the agency is satisfied with version 1. SpaceX is a company that NASA has discovered it could rely on for its missions. What do you think of the Starship 2.0? Our comment section is open.